Welcome back, everybody. So I'm not sure when this video will come out. It might be a little late, but the first week of October, which is when I'm filming this, is Mystery Series Week. So I decided to do a video about some of my favorite mystery series. This is definitely not extensive. I had to do a little bit of research to try to remember the series that I've read, so I'm sure I left some out. And also, thinking about this video made me realize that I don't read a lot of mysteries that are part of a series. I don't read a lot of series in general, and when I do, a lot of times I'll just read the first book, or maybe the first two books. So that's what happened with a few of these, but I still enjoyed the ones that I read, and you might too. And then at the end, I have a few books that I would like to read, or a few series that I would like to start. So to start this video off, I am going to name one of the most famous murder mystery, or just mystery in general series, which is the Poirot series by Agatha Christie. So I know in past videos I have called out authors that wrote about problematic things, racism and homophobia and other issues, and Agatha Christie has had her share of problematic behavior, so I'm definitely not ignoring that, and it's something that I'm still kind of doing my research on and looking into, but I do recognize that, for example, her book And Then There Were None used to be called by a different name, which was really offensive and used the N-word, and that was not okay, is not okay. But the reason I put this series on here is because the books that I have read in the Poirot series do have a special place in my heart. I read them before I learned about some of those problematic behaviors, and the first one I read by her, the first book I read by her, Murder on the Orient Express, got me out of a really, really tough time in my life. So there's still books that I look upon fondly, although now I am trying to be more aware of just things that aren't okay. The second series is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. So I've only read the first one. I don't actually know if that's the name of the series. That's the first book in the series. But I really, really liked it. It is about a girl who is in high school, and for her capstone project, she decides to investigate the presumed murder of a former student at her high school. And she ends up teaming up with the presumed murderer's brother to do so. Oh, and I should say, sorry, I didn't even say what the Poirot series is about. So if you're not familiar, Poirot is a Belgian detective who moves to England. I think he might be a refugee, but he is kind of like a Sherlock Holmes character. He's just incredibly smart, often several steps ahead of everyone else, including the reader, and it's just about the cases that he solves. So anyway, we got that one down. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, just described that one. That one I really enjoyed. I don't know if I'll read the second one, because I liked the way that the first one wrapped up, and a lot of times if I think that the first book in a series has a good ending, I won't continue on because I don't want to ruin my perception of the series, either with the knowledge that something bad happens to the character, or if I feel like the future books aren't written as well, then it just kind of ruins it for me. Oh, and I should also say, I don't know if some of these are actually series per se, or if they're just a duology where there's two books. but I'm just kind of including any book where there's more than one. So next up is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. And that one is about another teenage girl who is really interested in a cold case. And this was a case where a child who, I believe she was the daughter of the founder of the school, or maybe it was just someone who used to live in the building that is now the school. It's been a little while since I've read it, but the kid was kidnapped, her and her mother. They disappeared. And it's been maybe 100 years later and still nobody knows why. And then suspicious things start happening in the present on campus. It's one of those kind of boarding school settings, and this girl is trying to solve it. So those I really enjoyed. I read all of the ones in the main plot. I think there were 3, and then there was another that she came out with called The Box in the Woods, which I think was after the main girl graduates, or she moves away, and so I didn't read that one because, again, I felt like the ending was all nice and neatly wrapped up, and I didn't want to start a separate story because I knew it was a completely different plot. Also, I had a lot of complaints about the love interest. I did not like him, and I didn't want to read more about him. Next up is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I recently read this one, and it is mostly about a group of elderly people who live in a retirement village, basically, and they are just really interested in mysteries, and so they take it upon themselves to solve this murder that happens that hits a little close to home, and they end up at first begrudgingly but kind of getting the police to get involved. And it's a very funny book that is also sweet and sad and meaningful at times, and I heard that the sequel is really good, if not better, so I think I am gonna try to read that one. Another one of book series that I enjoy, or at least the first one, is One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. So that one was recently made into a series, I believe, and it starts with this group of kids in detention, almost Breakfast Club-esque. They're all kind of different from each other, and it follows all of their point of views. And one of the kids nobody likes, and within the first chapter, I'm pretty sure, the kid ends up having an allergic reaction and dying. But the other kids who were in detention, the other high schoolers, think that he was actually murdered, and so they go about trying to solve his murder. The book, I think it was just a really fun time. I don't think it was a very deep book, and it was written in a way that's very easy to read, that I think is sometimes not seen as high quality writing, but I mean, I enjoyed it. I think that sometimes you can just be in the mood for a book that's a super fast read and is engaging, and it doesn't have to be super complex or have flowery writing, and that can be a great time. So that's how I felt about that book. I don't know if I'll read the second one. I don't even know if the second one is about the same characters, but because this book didn't leave a huge impression on me, I don't know that I want to continue. I also really enjoyed the Bryant and May series by Christopher Fowler. I've read a couple of the books with my mom, and they are just hilarious. It's just really funny, and it's got that sort of quirky British sense of humor. So even though I don't usually read detective stories in a series, because I feel like it can kind of be like the same thing over and over again, I did really enjoy the ones in this series that I read. And then I'm going to mention a couple series that I read that were for younger audiences. So probably one of my favorite series, and the only one on this list that I've read all of the books in, is The Sisters Grimm by Michael Buckley. And I think this is a middle grade series, but it follows two girls who obviously are sisters, and they are the descendants of the Brothers Grimm. But the idea is that the Brothers Grimm were writing true accounts of things that actually happened. So I think, it's been so long since I've read these, but I think they end up in this magical town where a lot of the people who live in it are fairy tale characters. They get sent to live with somebody related to them, probably their aunt or something. And it is also kind of a magical detective series. They end up solving all of these crimes, and I just loved the characters and found it really engaging as a kid. I remember really enjoying it, and I tore through those books. So it has been a while since I've read them, but I think they would still hold up if you're interested in middle grade books. And then the other series that I just had to throw in here, because it's iconic, even though it's younger than middle grade, I would say, more like a chapter book kind of vibe, although I think any audience could read. I did read one of these recently, actually, because it had to do with sled dogs, and I was mushing with sled dogs last year when I was in Alaska, so I wanted to read about it. But this is the Magic Treehouse series by Mary Pope Osborne. So even though they are for quite a young audience, the one I read recently was still like an entertaining time. When I was a kid, I absolutely loved them. So if you haven't read them, they are basically about a brother and sister who find a treehouse in the woods near their house, and basically they find a book. I'm not sure if they find the book first or if they meet the person first, but they end up meeting Morgan Le Fay, and I believe Merlin is in here too sometimes. And she basically takes them through these history books to different periods of history in different places, and they learn about the time, and they have to solve a mystery. And yeah, they were just a lot of fun. So not necessarily something that I would be reading now at this age, although I did read the one about the sled dogs because I felt like I had to, but it was enjoyable. But yeah, I just wanted to throw it in there because it was a fun series that I enjoyed. And I'm going to finish up with 3 series that I want to read but have not yet. So we have The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So from my understanding of what I've heard about these books, it's about a girl who basically is given a large sum of money, or the total inheritance, I think, of this really, really rich dude who died, even though she is not related to him. And the only stipulation is that she has to live in his house with all his family members who don't get anything for a certain period of time. And so there's a whole mystery running through those books. And then Murder at Pirates Cove by Josh Lanyon. Apparently these are a cozy mystery series with a gay male protagonist. So I just thought that was really cool because I mentioned this I probably didn't mention this exactly with the other cozy mystery that I read, Body and Soul Food. When I was talking about that book, I mentioned that I don't really like when a lot of cozy mysteries, because I feel like they're not serious enough for what I'm looking for. But another reason that I'm not super into a lot of cozy mysteries is because they usually deal with straight romance, and I don't know if it's the romance itself or just the way that it's written, but I tend to not be a big fan of it. So this one is a gay romance, so I am more interested in that one. I want to try it out, and the main character, I believe, owns a bookstore. That's all I really know. I think the love interest might be a cop. And then the last series that I would like to read is Marion Lane and the Midnight Murder by T.A. Wilberg. And I also don't know a whole lot about this one, but I think it's about sort of a secret underground detective agency in London not now, it's in the past, maybe the 1800s, and the main girl has just become an investigator, I think, or she's kind of near the bottom of the totem pole, and she's trying to prove herself and rise up. So I've heard it's really good. I got a really good recommendation from my mother, so I am looking forward to reading that one. So those are all the books that I recommend or have been recommended, and let me know if you guys have read any of these, or especially if you've read the ones that I am interested in reading, and let me know if you have any other recommendations that I didn't list for any mystery series. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.